wait till it's formally 12:05, but we'll leave plenty of time for our speakers.
We have plenty of time. I hope she's on.
Okay, and I'd like to thank Major Mark Johnson ahead of time for joining us today. Thanks everybody for joining us today.
May not be able to hear it,
everybody get a nice bread base for March Madness starting tonight and this weekend. So fingers crossed that the city and state gets through everything flawlessly. And this is a shining example of what Hoosiers can do in organized sports. Please remind the Kiwanis to mute themselves if you're not talking to help the clarity. It sounds like everyone has this morning. So thank you very much. Next week, we've got Howard Kellman joining us from the Indianapolis Indians. The week after that, we've got Randy Mobley, International Baseball League Commissioner. And April 8th, after 12 months of isolation and sheltering at home, we're going to have our first in-person meeting at the Columbia Club. And we're going to have a opportunity for people to join via Zoom. If you would like to join us remotely, it'll kind of be two separate meetings where the members on Zoom will be able to talk to each other and talk about this lovely 4-year-old picking his nose as the Kiwanis graphic. And then in person, it'll be a Kiwanis Connection, where we'll have the opportunity just to talk and to see each other and see how the Columbia Club does with their Wi-Fi and connectivity. But the second Thursday of each month moving forward, we're going to try to meet in person. And then as we go into April, Mayor Jim Brainerd, Clay Chaffin from Bradford Woods IU Outdoor Education Center, and then Barry Collier, Butler Athletic Director, end of April. Jason Burke was unable to join us this morning. He asked I put the volunteer opportunity to the membership April 6th and April 8th between 4 and 7 p.m. He will be conducting East Scholarship interviews, and he does need your help. So please email or call Jason. Just call him repeatedly, please. And June 15th, we are having our annual golf outing. Jason's actually been on that committee with me for a number of years. I appreciate his help. Appreciate Gina and Kirby, Taylor, Tina, Trina, everybody who has helped that event over the years as we look to continue that as our primary fundraising effort over the course of the year. Please consider making a donation to our club. Taylor will put that link in the chat also. And again, I'll tend to make a small donation relative to the amount of time I'm saving, not commuting back and forth downtown. Our basketball committee, in lieu of our in-person lunch, which is a shame to miss with those 300 or 400 high school students, we're putting together a video that will be coming out soon that recognizes our scholarship athletes. It includes an interview with our new member and new IHSAA commissioner, Paul Niedig, along with a message from Pacer TJ McConnell. Keep an eye out for that. Major Mark Johnson is going to say a few words about this year's bell ringing competition with Rotary.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here today. Thank you for the invitation. And it's good to see this club staying active in this way. You know, in 2020, all of us, every organization faced a lot of challenges, and the Salvation Army was not exempt from that. In fact, going into our annual fundraising campaign for Christmas, which includes the Red Kettle, we were very concerned, and some preliminary studies had said that it was going to be a projection of up to 50% decrease in donations at the Red Kettles. But we did a lot of proactive work, and our volunteers came through as well. And we took a lot of safety precautions to make sure everyone was safe, but it was not the way it was projected. In fact, it was the opposite. People were more generous this year in giving, and we surpassed our goal at Christmas time earlier than we ever had before. So we are so grateful for the people who donated, for the volunteers such as yourselves who helped us get there. And today I want to let you know, well, first of all, I want to say that there's a saying that we have in the Salvation Army: volunteers are the army behind the army. And so you folks are all a part of the Salvation Army. and through your support. And we really, literally could not do what we do without your help and support. So there's many ways to connect with us. Look us up on the web, and you can salvationarmyindiana.org and get connected in many other ways throughout the year. But we so appreciate all that you've done. And I know you've got this little competition going back and forth with some other club. I'm not going to mention that name, but you did phenomenal this year. We are excited to say that in the Red Kettle, you raised $1,665.85. In the virtual kettle, which is the online kettle, which is a great way to COVID safe raise funds, $833. And then somehow other donations, $20,274.55. Woo, for a grand total of $22,773.40. That is amazing. And I want to show you here your certificate that you will receive. In fact, Karen Burns is on. Karen, can I just present this to you right now? Would you receive this in the name of your club?
I would be honored.
Great. Let me just give that to you. Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you folks. And I see from your smile, some of you got our little illusion going on there, and we can be tricky, you know. So thank you so much, and God bless you each one, and stay safe and healthy.
I mean, the special effects we just witnessed are, I'm impressed. If you had a future in Hollywood.
Hey, can I just very quickly say to my fellow Kiwanians, thank you for your big hearts and for your decades of generosity and support of the Salvation Army. It speaks to who we are as individuals. It speaks to who we are as a club. And I just want to thank you all for your generosity and what you do for this community every day. So, President Eric, thank you for letting me say that.
Well, thank you for your leadership, Ms. Karen, in the last couple of decades in the city, and for leading the bell ringing campaign each winter. We appreciate you lining up all those locations and the various volunteers. And again, Major Johnson, thanks for your time, and thanks for Taylor and Tina hooking up that seamless transition of plaques that we just saw, certificates of appreciation. So that being said, on location in Key West, I'm going to turn this over to Greg Silver, who introduced today's speakers. And Greg, we cannot hear you. You have to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah, you can hear me now? Thanks, Eric. All right, so I'm on the northeast corner of Key West of the island, and it's right on the ocean. You might be able to see a little bit behind me of the ocean back there, and at least making you warm up a little bit with the palm trees. So I've been reading Graham's book about the Cinderella story and Cinderella strategy, and I recommend it highly. Graham Honecker's book is just wonderful, and I hope that you'll be able to get a copy of it. Well, I wanted to welcome all of you from Key West, and also thank those who are going to speak today. The Galapagos, I visited some years ago, and as many of you know, it's 600 miles, as Trina has indicated, west of the Ecuador, and this program is about a special book and that Kurt Vonnegut wrote, and the Vonnegut Library itself, called Galapagos, and a virtual exhibit of photographs that have been part of an exhibit that's now starting at the Vonnegut Library. So I want to introduce our speakers today. My friend Julia Whitehead is the mother of two sons and founder of this and the CEO of the Kurt Vonnegut Library there in Indianapolis. Our background includes being an officer in the U.S. Marine Corps and writing and editing for Random House, Military Officers Association of America, and the state legislatures of South Carolina and Indiana. Julia taught English to 100 children in Thailand in 2000 and worked for nearly 9 years as a medical writer for Eli Lilly before leaving Lilly to open her dream of the Vonnegut Library. She was has been a member of the Stanley K. Lacey Leadership Series and she serves as the affiliate steering committee for the Chicago American Writers Museum. Her writing has appeared in the Chicago Tribune and biography.com. So it goes and Finding the Festival was a finalist for the Best Documentary in the Love International Film Festival of 2019. In early 2019, she successfully led the $1 million campaign for the Vonnegut Library to purchase its forever home at the corner of the east corner of Northwest Street and Indiana Avenue, and I recommend all of you to get down there and see it. Her co-speaker today is, with her is Drew. Hold one second. Drew, I'm going to mispronounce his name, but DeSimone. He's a screenwriter with a PhD in anthropology and 2021 program chair of the Kurt Vonnegut Good Earth, Vonnegut and Environment for this year and this year, featuring the environment and Kurt Vonnegut's writing. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Julia and take it from there. And I may come back to ask a few questions, but I know Julia's going to cover us. Julia?
Yeah. Thank you, Greg. Thank you. I'm so glad you get to be away in a beautiful setting like that.
Thank you.
It is wonderful to be back with all of you and to hear the good work you're doing. You know, one thing I love about living in Indianapolis is the way our community organizations, pitch in, help each other, help the community, and whether you're a basketball fan or not, this tournament is so super exciting for our community. And anyway, it's just great to be back here. I was here before, as Greg had mentioned, as people were starting to join the meeting. And so it's such an honor to be back. Several of you helped pitch in to make our building possible. Greg mentioned our address there, that beautiful building on Indiana Avenue with the balcony that looks like a New Orleans style building. We did raise that money to buy the building through pledges. And so those pledges will hopefully be paid off over the next year or so. But we started with $1 million loan, and now we're down to about 95,000 that we owe. And then we completely own our building, right? So that is amazing. So thanks again for all of you who pitched in and shared the word about our building. So we did open November of 2019. Had great attendance as we started the new year last year. We were featured in Forbes magazine and The Economist and New York Times. And we had incredible momentum going. And we're really able to focus in on our programs with students and veterans and teachers and all of that good work. And then the pandemic hit, right? And we closed our doors on St. Patrick's Day last year. We opened up in the fall. We were doing many virtual programs last year. We figured out how to do, big events and small events virtually with the help of our Zoom producer who lives in Los Angeles. But, we're having events that are 400 people and such on Zoom, which we never would have even tried something like that before the pandemic. So our gift shop sales increased last year, which was a surprise. And, we're hoping to have a bigger turnout this year as we all get our vaccinations. But I'm not going to talk too much about Galapagos, the book, and the islands, because my colleague Drew is going to address that. But I just want to mention what we're doing this year. So every year we have a theme, and this year our theme is the environment. And I want to read this letter that Kurt Vonnegut wrote in 1988. So here it goes. The sorts of leaders we need now are not those who promise ultimate victory over nature through perseverance in living as we do right now, but those with the courage and intelligence to present to the world what appears to be nature's stern but reasonable surrender terms. Number 1, reduce and stabilize your population. Number 2, stop poisoning the air, the water, and the topsoil. Number 3, stop preparing for war and start dealing with your real problems. Number 4, Teach your kids and yourselves too, while you're at it, how to inhabit a small planet without helping to kill it. Number 5, stop thinking science can fix anything if you give it $1 trillion. Number 6, stop thinking your grandchildren will be okay no matter how wasteful or destructive you may be, since they go to a nice new planet. They can go to a nice new planet on a spaceship. That is really mean and stupid. Number 7, and so on, or else. Am I too pessimistic about life 100 years from now? Maybe I've spent too much time with scientists and not enough time with speechwriters for politicians. For all I know, even bag ladies and bag gentlemen will have their own personal helicopters or rocket belts in AD 2088. Nobody will have to leave home to go to work or school or even stop watching television. Everybody will sit around all day punching the keys of computer terminals connected to everything there is and sip orange drink through straws like the astronauts. Cheers, Kurt Vonnegut. Okay, so there you have it. Kurt said it in 1988. So we've been, embarking on this environmental programming this year, not only on the local level with our own staff and volunteers doing work with our local environmental organizations, and Earth Charter with its summer camp that's coming up. We're the host of we're the venue for that summer climate camp with Earth Charter. We do things with Keep Indianapolis Beautiful, and I'm forgetting like a whole list of organizations that we're partnering with this year. And then we're also reaching out nationally, looking at the Mississippi River at different points along the river and talking with those communities. We're focused on all sorts of issues, what people are doing to the environment, or in that case to the river, and what the river, how the river affects the life of people. And that's just one series of programming. Drew, as Greg said, he's our chair for our programming this year. How amazing to have someone, a PhD in astrobiology who also has all this experience with Vonnegut's Galapagos and many other things that Drew brings to our plate. What a blessing that we have Drew with us this year. So I think I will go ahead and just turn it over to Drew to share some exciting things that he has going on. But yeah, be happy to answer questions later. Drew, feel free to take it away.
Great. Thanks, Julia. And thanks to y'all for having us today. As Julia said, and I heard Greg and others talking about at the beginning, at the top of the meeting, the Galapagos is a very exciting place. I think 2021 has the potential to be a very exciting year for our planet and progress that we have the potential to make as a species for ourselves and for the planet. So there are a lot of things that I could talk to you about today, and I'm happy to take this in any direction that you would be interested in. I would love to, at some point, pull up our Life in Galapagos exhibit and share some of that artwork inspired by our Good Earth theme this year, which was really used to kick off the Good Earth programming for the year. But maybe by way of segue, as Julia mentioned, I did go to graduate school at the University of Washington, and my PhD thesis looked at the evolution of life on this planet in really weird environments. Think of like Yellowstone at the bottom of the ocean. So I had the chance to use submersibles like the DSV Alvin that found the Titanic, and also some remotely operated vehicles to dive on hydrothermal vent environments all over the world. And the point of that was to try to find environments that were similar to millions and millions of years ago when we think life evolved on this planet, or extrapolating. Our lab put some of the instruments on some of the original Mars rovers. Where should we be looking for potential life on other planets, and where might that life have evolved on other planets? So I've for a long time had an interest in the natural sciences, in the biological sciences, but also specifically how we evolve with nature, where we come from and where we're going, which is obviously something that Kurt thought a lot about in all of his books, not just Galapagos, but certainly in Galapagos. For those of you who have read it, you know that well. For those of you who haven't read it, Galapagos is obviously one of Kurt's many works. Greg said it himself, how ahead of the times Kurt was. The letter that Julia just read is another great example of that. But in the story Galapagos, in the novel Galapagos, he predicted things like the iPhone and COVID in 1985. It's a story of a high school science teacher who, unbeknownst to her, gets marooned on an island, and without her knowledge, the rest of the world sort of crumbles in the perfect storm of global warfare, geopolitical collapse, climate change, and emerging disease. And her actions on that island actually have gigantic consequences for the evolution of human beings, the survival of human beings, and then the evolution of human beings a million years in the future. So needless to say, it was a novel that I was always very interested in. And through sheer serendipity, I was in Seattle after grad school working in professional soccer. That's a story for a different day. And I had the opportunity to act in a movie, in a Hollywood movie, back east in Massachusetts. And that experience over a series of months sort of made me realize that I wanted to pursue film acting and screenwriting, which is how the very short story version of how I come to live in Brooklyn today, and as an actor and writer. How I came to the Vonnegut Library was actually because of Galapagos. As I started acting, I also started writing, and obviously with my science background and my interest in Kurt's work, and my interest in evolution, and my interest in the natural sciences, and my concern for our planet and the behavior of human beings, Galapagos was an obvious book for me to adapt into a film, which I did prior to COVID. And it's currently a script that is in development, and hopefully one day in the not so near future, we'll have the opportunity to film it, and you'll be able to see it on the big screen. So I sent my script to Julia, and she emailed me back immediately, which is not something that I expected at the time, to hear back so quickly from the CEO of the Vonnegut Museum and Library. But that began probably a several month discourse about the script, and potentially doing a reading and getting more involved in 2021 programming, because it was obviously going to be centered around the environment, which brings us to today. Julia told you a little bit about some of the programs that we have going on at KVML, and I'll tell you a bit about some of the ones that we have coming up in the next couple of weeks that I think are really exciting, maybe towards the end of this. But I'd love to be able to pull up our Galapagos virtual exhibit. And I know Greg is very familiar with it, since he is actually featured in the Your Galapagos section, along with Rennie, of the gallery. And I'm not sure who has had the chance to see it, but I'd love to pull it up. Is that something that I can do by sharing my screen, or would it be better to do on your end?
Drew, feel free to share your screen.
Okay, just give me 1 second to pull that up. And bear with me. I actually have a new laptop, so I'm having to put passwords in. Okay, let me try this again. Here we go. Can everybody see that? yeah, great. Okay, perfect. So let me start with this. So the impetus for Life in Galapagos was, we have this year of environmental programming centered around really Kurt's message of Good Earth, championing environmental care. And we wanted to start the year off with something that both set the bar high, as well as gave us inspiration for the type of human nature balance that we can aspire to the world over. And for any of you who have been to the Galapagos, I've known the Galapagos for a long time. My wife and I had the chance to first visit it many, many years ago after doing some volunteer work in Ecuador. And it really is the poster child for conservation and sustainability and environmental protection. 15 years ago, overfishing, over tourism, things like that were really wreaking havoc on many of the ecological systems associated with the Galapagos, and we lost some species because of that. My friend and the photographer who you see here in the Life in the Galapagos page, Tui De Roy, has lived on the Galapagos Islands, on the island of Santa Cruz, since she was 2 years old, and knows that story firsthand. But not only have fans and people who follow the Galapagos like myself seen an improvement over the last 15 years, but people who live there, naturalists, wildlife photographers like Tui, assure us that the government and locals have done a fantastic job to restore Galapagos tortoise populations and protect a lot more of the area from the sort of exploitive tourism that was occurring 15 or so years ago. It's by no means perfect, but it really is a litmus for what can be accomplished if we truly think about these ecosystems from a human responsibility to nature as well as fellow humans, but also to safeguard the natural environment that we have, that we should be thankful to, that supports us in a lot of ways. So that was really the impetus of the Life in the Galapagos exhibit. And as you can see here, I won't read the captions, but Tui and I went through, for any of you who know Tui's work, she's a world-renowned wildlife photographer that has published books and won awards, something like 50 awards worldwide for her photography on all 7 continents. So she by no means is a Galapagos photographer only, but she's best known for her Galapagos photography. And I believe prior to this exhibit, she'd really never done an online exhibit and had done very few in-person exhibits. Her method of getting her work out there was always to publish beautiful, large format photographic books, which is how I came to know her work, buying one of these books in a gift shop at the airport while leaving the Galapagos for the first time. These photographs are from Tui's most recent book, which really is a culmination of the top 200 photographs that she's collected on the Galapagos over 50 years of her living there. So it's an amazing book. The link to the book is at the bottom of the Life in the Galapagos page. But I'll just sort of flick through here. These are the blue-footed boobies. Feel free to interrupt me at any time if you want to ask questions about any of these photographs. I don't have a formal presentation planned, but I thought I would take a few minutes to just tell you about this exhibit and then also show you your Galapagos exhibit that we've recently closed for submissions. It'll be up for a few more weeks. So these are the blue-footed boobies. They're not endemic to Galapagos. They do exist in very few habitats throughout that part of the world, but they are best known for their superfluous mating dance on the Galapagos, which showcases their blue feet to try to attract a mate for rearing single, sometimes up to 3 young ones, but most often only a single hatchling will survive. So here's a male, signified by its seemingly smaller pupil and smaller size, landing in a very extravagant way, about to court the female. Here you can see about halfway through this beautiful dance they do, the female on the right, which is slightly larger, and the pupil isn't actually larger. It has to do with some of the pigmentation around the eye that makes it look that way, but you can distinguish the two based on that as well. They are aggressive marine hunters. As you can see here, Tui tells me that this is something that she captured not super frequently, but in times of scarcity of food, they will compete underwater. And the two boobies on the right that you see have small fish in their mouths. One of them has just stolen a fish from, I believe, if you can see my cursor, the boobie on the very far left. Coincidentally, I'm going through the process right now of designing a movie poster for the film Galapagos. And not to spoil it, but on the poster cover, there are going to be, there will not be any humans, even though it is a story about humans. Kurt, as well as myself in the adaptation, uses stories about the wildlife on the Galapagos to tell tales about evolution. And the blue-footed booby dance is one that we use interspersed throughout the story. So I've decided to use blue-footed boobies in sort of humanistic pose and small items of clothing as representations of the characters. And it was actually inspired by this photograph and the expression on this blue-footed boobie's face, who has just lost this fish. I sort of, you can, for me, I can see a sort of, wait, what just happened? Wasn't that in my mouth? Kind of look, which I think in a way is very Vonnegutian and also very specifically relevant to some of the, shall I say, less responsible characters in the novel Galapagos. So the last of the blue-footed boobies is this male in between mating seasons, just I believe at the beginning of a El Nino cycle that closes out. We have a few from the Galapagos penguin. Many people, including characters in the novel Galapagos, are not aware that there were penguins on the equator, but they are in fact there. And this penguin species only exists on the Galapagos. We've included this quote from Galapagos novel about how they've adapted to life in a warmer environment than you typically find penguins. And I just love this. One of the things I love about Tui's work is how she captures these images from the perspective of animals, not from the perspective of human beings. It's almost like she's living with them when she photographs, which obviously, compared to a lot of photographers on Galapagos Islands, she has. My favorite, and another one that makes features in the novel and the screenplay, the marine iguana, only found on the Galapagos Islands, looks like a very large and intimidating species, but in fact it's large, about the size of a house cat, and a very docile creature. They feed, depending on the sex and the age of these marine iguanas, they'll feed in different intertidal zones. This is a beautiful photograph with an ebbing tide where you can't see it, but the marine iguana is using its razor sharp claws to hold on to this patch of sargassum. And then as the tide goes out, which is the most typical time that they will feed due to the proximity and their ability to access their seaweed food source, you have these large marches of marine iguanas heading out to sea to feed. So I'll keep ticking along, but are there any questions about the blue-footed boobies, the marine iguanas, anything else you'd like to know about anything else I've said so far?
Drew, I had done an elephant experience at the zoo last year and was kind of surprised to learn in some of these areas that thrive on ecotourism, when COVID put a halt to that, the sad outcome for African elephants is poaching increases basically immediately. So how has the Galapagos got through the last year?
It's a good question. I obviously haven't been there in the last year, but I have spoken to Tui several times. They shut down pretty quickly, and it hurt business, clearly hurt business. But I think that unlike, I'm not sure where the elephant experience that you're speaking of in particular, but I know, for example, having traveled in Thailand and seeing how much of the economy relies on that type of ecotourism, also in an environment where those elephants are endangered, they're not treated very well, even by some of these small businesses, and that can be poached for various reasons, sometimes as simple as a food source, if not other commercial reasons, when people are not regulating that. So I think what you're really getting at is there's a balance between ecotourism, the benefits, but also in some cases the negatives. Certainly historically in the Galapagos, we've seen the negatives of ecotourism, but Galapagos have never been shut down to tourism. They've just done a great job of regulating while also regreening and reseeding a lot of populations, natural populations in these islands. The Galapagos tortoises are a perfect example of that, which is some of the pictures that I'm showing now. So specific to that phenomenon, to my knowledge, has not happened in the Galapagos. I think because it is a UNESCO World Heritage site, it is protected, unlike Thailand or large swaths of Thailand, where you see elephant tourism. Even though tourism has hurt the local economies on the Galapagos, no doubt, you don't have a population of people there who are exploiting the natural wildlife in the same way that you would potentially. I don't want to speak ill of Thailand, but I think the potential for that to happen, what you're describing happening in a place like that, would certainly be more probable. Does that answer your question?
It certainly does. And the elephant, I forgot that you were in Brooklyn, Drew. The elephant experience I did was at the Indianapolis Zoo. Okay.
Yeah, I assumed you didn't actually take a safari or something like that. I just didn't know if you were speaking about a specific, an African elephant, an Indonesian elephant, what that was. But it's probably the story that I relayed regarding my experience in Thailand is probably true for a lot of elephant populations the world over.
So then, as we head into Earth Day in April, would you mind kind of touching on how the Vonnegut libraries, is for Julie or Drew, kind of embrace Kurt Vonnegut each year, this time of year, as far as encouraging people to have a lighter carbon footprint and get out of their house and maybe be a little more of a climate activist or an environmentalist? Julie and Drew, is this something that you guys do every spring as part of your annual calendar?
We hadn't done it every spring. I don't know why. And we started doing more environmental work when we bought our building and we became part of a neighborhood, and we started thinking about, okay, what does that look like? What can we do better? Certainly there are things that we have done as far as recycling and that kind of thing. But this year for Earth Day, we're partnering with Keep Indianapolis Beautiful. We're planting, native perennials and things. And I don't know all the details of that. That's about to be rolled out by my colleague, Beth Ann Broadhurst. But there's also an educational series connected with Keep Indianapolis Beautiful, a lunch and learn type of thing. When we do our programs, typically our virtual programs, we include those opportunities that people can do. And, everybody's different. Some people are they're home and they're going to be home and they just want a few tips on what can they do in their homes to to try to improve the planet. And then other people want to get more involved with organizations or, making donations and that kind of thing. So I would suggest folks go to VonnegutLibrary.org to, see what we have going on. We're trying to keep up with everything that we have going on. So things get added to our website practically every day because there's just so much. And then also next year is 2022 is Kurt Vonnegut's 100th birthday. And that our programming will double next year nationally as well as locally. But I don't know, Drew, did you have anything you wanted to add about environmentalism and the work we're doing?
Yeah, I would just say that, I think that your question's a great one. It's part of everything that we're doing this year, honestly. But so this exhibit and what I've opened up right now is now more of, after we did the Tui De Roy exhibit, we opened submissions up internationally for anyone who has art, photography, poetry, etc., inspired by the Galapagos. And if you haven't seen it already, here's a photo by Rennie, I believe. And here, where's Greg's? Where's Greg's? I just saw it. Oh, I'm sorry. It's weird on my screen right now because I zoomed out, but Greg's is this beautiful tortoise over here that I'm not sure if you can see, but it's this one. It's a relic of sharing my screen with through Zoom. But we have 50 something other programs, scheduled throughout the year. And whether it be our kickoff events with artists like Sam Van Aken or Jan McCabe from the EPA, or a new program called Last Tuesdays at 7, where we started by having a discussion with urban revitalization expert Majora Carter from the South Bronx, who's doing a project in Indianapolis right now, or coming up, we're discussing the work of Wendell Berry on March 30th. We'll have a wildlife and nature author, Scott Russell Sanders, and a good friend of Wendell's on. We'll have filmmakers from Sundance on to share one of their films called Look and See, which has environmental themes. So everything that we're doing this year, all of our programming is really about championing the art and activism which enriches environmental care. So they are discussions and presentations from experts about things like how can you as individuals reduce your carbon footprint? How can you as an individual lend your weight to policy movements which will make sure that larger business, whether it be agribusiness or technological businesses, reduce their carbon footprint as well. It's all in an effort to educate as well as foster discourse around these environmental issues. So I think it's a fantastic question. And I would say that whether it be through using galleries like your Galapagos and Life in the Galapagos, or some of our other programming like Last Tuesdays at 7, our Mississippi River series, even the Gene Stratton Porter event that's happening on April 9th via Zoom, they all have an environmental theme which promotes responsibility and environmental care as individuals, but also as a community.
Hello, this is Greg. Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
I just wanted to say that everyone can do something for sure. I feel good about picking up some trash along the beach today. We can all do something for sure. And the Galapagos are just illustrative of the best of the best. I mean, the Galapagos Islands, I think in the Indian Ocean are another one where the species are so calm. I think I had another picture where the sleeping sea lion outside of our room on the island, and there it is.
This one right here.
And it would go out each day and hunt and sleep all day. It was out all night and then it was sleeping all day. And so you'd open the door, it was just snoring. I mean, they are so, these species are so unafraid, and so they have to be protected. So there's been a lot of overfishing outside of the Ecuadorian waters, the national park, by foreign fleets. And so Ecuador recently has been moving to expand the boundaries of the Galapagos to stop that. because this fish and whatnot are, again, they're just sitting there to be picked up, and they're not acclimated. Now, why Darwin, Darwin talked about how these were so special and enchanted isles, he said, and as he saw them, and the birds that about, Drew, that are all from particular groups and have special protection, special species that are only there. It's very unusual. I saw yellow warbirds being attacked by great blue herons. I mean, things were just very unusual there. So I just wanted to say the exhibit looks great, and I hope you can get this around, and the book. And my wife, a book dealer, has the first edition of this wonderful book, Galapagos. I've read it, and it is very strange, isn't it, Julia? It's a very strange book, but the bombing of the island by the Peru Air Force is very, but the evolutionary ideas of Mr. Vonnegut are there, and it's a very unusual book. I don't know any other thing to say about it. I recommend everyone read it, and I know you have it in your bookstore, and everyone should visit there as well.
Thank you. Can I just quickly add something in too?
Sure.
So we have the online bookstore at VonnegutLibrary.org, but Lillian Dowman and others pitched in to relocate our public door to Indiana Avenue, which also allowed us to have a storefront gift shop that is hugely expanded. It's not just Vonnegut stuff. So come in and check out our gift shop. But I want to thank the Herb Simon Family Foundation for an exciting project we have going on. It's a youth writing program. So I don't know if you all have interest in volunteering to be writing mentors for IPS high school students, but they're focused on social justice writing. And this year we're using the environmental artwork of Edie Vonnegut, Kurt's daughter, who's done amazing, gorgeous work that is, pretty impactful on how we're damaging the planet. And the students are going to write about that art, and then their work will appear in our literary journal. But anyway, I could go on and on. I'll turn it back over. I think, Drew, you had something?
Well, I just loved what Greg said about the novel Galapagos. And I was just going to add that I think what's so beautiful about this book, not only the dramatic irony that Kurt builds into the story, but also that in my experience with this story, whenever I tell people about it, they want to think about it as science fiction. But so much of it is science fact. And what I mean by that is so many of the examples that lead to our destruction or the existential threat existing in the novel and the story are based on real world events that are either happening or have happened. And we saw that with COVID. And I don't mean that in a sort of morbid way, but I mean that in it's on all of our shoulders to, I think, be a little bit more responsible and talk about this. And that's really what we're trying to do with a lot of our programs is talk about this in a format like this, not in a shameful way, not in a we should, you should do more way, but just make sure that it's in the public discourse, because it is up to all of us to, do our part. Kurt said, and I think Julia alluded to it sort of in her reading of the letter, but some of you might know the author Suzanne McConnell, who wrote a book recently called Pity the Reader, Kurt's Advice to Writers. And she recently told me a story, which I think she shared in one of our events this year, that she was at a writer's workshop with Kurt, I think in the late 70s in New York. And then a TV station asked him, if you had one piece of advice the workshop, the interview had nothing to do with the environment. But if you had one piece of advice to everyone listening out there, what would it be? And he paused and apparently looked at the reporter and said, well, if we stop everything we're doing right now, this was in the 70s or early 80s, if we stop absolutely everything we're doing right now, it would still take Mother Earth 100 years to repair herself. So if there was ever any question that this was on his mind constantly and influenced his work, then I think that lays that to bed. But we're now in a time where we have the opportunity to really do our small part and see big societal and natural changes. And I think, I just appreciate the fact that everybody on this call, cares about those issues as well. So thank you for having us and for taking a look at the Galapagos exhibit. Thank you to Greg and the rest for exhibiting with us. We really appreciate your art and activism. And obviously, if you have any other questions for us, then we'd be happy to answer them.
Julia, how can we see this entire exhibit online? Is it online already?
Yes, it's online. And then we'll also have an in-person portion of this exhibit that will be on display at the museum in September. That last week of September is Banned Books Week, which is always a huge thing for us. That's also the week Edie Vonnegut will be in town. We do other programs, including one looking at Upton Sinclair's The Jungle and talking about what are today's jungles? What are those horrible issues in our, our human environment that is contributing to people suffering and all of that. But yes, please do. You can safely tour the Vonnegut Library, and when you come in September to see Tui's photography, that'll be the most safe experience that we can provide. Drew, anything else to add that I missed about that?
Well, I just have one question. I've got the link open, and I'm glad you introduced me to Tui. I've got a few aquariums at home, like 11. So this would be good artwork for my fish room. But no, just the last thing, if you guys could touch on so we have a hard stop at 1. We got a few minutes. I heard a Sylvia Earle presentation a couple of years ago where she had the graphics showing pesticides, herbicides coming out of the Mississippi into the Gulf of Mexico, and how those chemicals settled along the west coast of Florida. Would you kind of just give us a little update on pollution in the Mississippi and how it's impacting the Gulf?
Sure. Well, first of all, I would encourage you to dial into our April, end of April. I don't know the date off the top of my head. It's either the 25th or the 30th, which will be our third and final episode of the Mississippi River series, where we'll be looking at this very issue in the Mississippi River Delta outside of New Orleans. So we're going to have some fantastic panelists. That panel is still being put together. It hasn't been fully announced, but we'll be excited to announce that in the coming weeks. It is still a major issue, and it's not just typical pesticides and herbicides, but what these pesticides and herbicides carry with it a lot of time is excess nutrients. So you're not only seeing these runoff events which affect the topwater species, the intertidal species, the salt marsh species. My undergraduate thesis was actually on pesticides in salt marshes and how it affects commercially viable shellfish populations outside of Charleston, South Carolina. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart. It hasn't improved at all, in my opinion, in the last 15 years. But even worse than that, what we don't realize is there's been an increasing of the anoxic zone, which is a zone of oxygen depleted water at the bottom of the delta of the Gulf of Mexico, where shellfish and fish populations live and now are being killed by the thousands, because along with these pesticides, what happens is there's massive nutrient runoff from all the agriculture, which, if you're interested in agriculture and soil degradation and human interaction with agriculture, please dial in on April 30th, where we'll be discussing Wendell Berry's work. But basically what happens is these excess nutrients wash down the Mississippi, and then you have these gigantic algal blooms which suck all the oxygen out of the water and deplete it, and it results in this massive fish kill-off, in addition to all of the things that we see on a day-to-day basis associated with pesticide and pollution. So it's a massive problem. Thank you for asking about it, and I hope to see you.
I know our time's almost up, Drew, and I want to thank you and Julia for this presentation, and maybe it'll make us all aware of doing something for the environment and protecting us from things like plastic pollution, et cetera. How do we get a copy of the Roy book? Do you have that, Julia? Do you have the book?
I don't think we have the book.
We have
Did you-
links to the book both in our library. We are in, so what I would encourage you to do is I put the link to the exhibit in the chat window. At the bottom of that gallery, you can find 3 different links to Tui's book. You can purchase it through her directly in New Zealand. You can purchase it through Amazon. And then we also, I believe, have a local bookstore partner. So it's up to you. Obviously, the shipping will vary. We are in talks with Tui to create a exclusive photo book for our gift shop, which would coincide with an in-person exhibit sometime later this year. So please feel free to look out for that as well.
Thank you again, and we look forward to working with you in the future. And Julia, Drew, thank you so much, and have a great day in Indiana.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care. All right.
So then, Drew, where are you in Brooklyn?
I live in Bushwick, and I'm actually coming from New Hampshire right now. My wife and I
Okay.
bought a house on the seacoast during COVID. You know, I haven't really needed to be in Brooklyn, but I live in Bushwick normally.
Okay, yeah. When my wife and I met, she was in Roosevelt Island. I was in Williamsburg. I have
Okay.
a sister right now in Skillman.
Okay.
So
Well, I love both
Williams.
Williamsburg and Roosevelt Island. I would much prefer living there than Bushwick, to be honest with you. But you know, starving
restaurants
artists.
in Bushwick. So then Julie, if you need someone, so my wife Lamita's on the phone. If you need someone to help on like the PR, like while all the news agencies are focusing on Indiana, Indianapolis for the NCAA, my wife Lamita used to work for ABC Good Morning America. So if you want to try to get some news anchors to stop by the library and do like a little expose, Lamita Steele is in the chat. Taylor has our emails. And Lamita just loves to help the community. So I love Kurt Vonnegut, and my wife and I met in New York and lived in New York for 10 years. I moved back, and yeah, as our most famous author, please feel free to exploit the Kiwanis Club. You gave us your time, and now we'll give you some of our time.
Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you. That's super exciting.
But no, so
I know we have a.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I know that in talking with Beth Ann, our director of operations, we have a bunch of really great stuff planned during Banned Books Week as well, where some media coverage might be fantastic. We've got some really special stuff planned during Banned Books Week this week, which is until September. So certainly we should do something before then, but would love to reach out again regarding that event as well.
Julia, what are the hours of the museum? If you want to come in there, what are the hours?
Okay, so standard hours are Friday through Monday, 10 to 5. We're actually there till 7, but the last official tour starts at 5. We do have extended hours during the NCAA tournament during the week, so you're welcome to come down then as well. And you know, as soon as we get through the pandemic, we'll be back to being open more days of the week. Tours, you have to go to VonnegutLibrary.org to sign up for a tour. But when you come, you pretty much have the whole building to yourself, along with our, staff member. You can do a guided tour or just walk around on your own.
There are great gifts there too to buy. Great gifts.
Yes, very
And
fun.
books.
Yes.
All right, we'll let you guys go. We kept you 2 minutes too long. Thanks again, everybody. Meeting's adjourned.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.